I just want to say that this is Carol Vickers on behalf of Practice Pay Solutions, and we are very grateful for your time today as you listen to this presentation. And I want to welcome you to an exciting university presentation. Practice Pay Solutions is very committed to supporting small businesses through learning and educational opportunities, and today we have a great guest. We are delighted to have Rjon Robbins with us. Now, Rjon Robbins is going to speak to you on something that seems pretty logical. It's about the importance of learning how to run a business. And you know, many of us do that, but it's not common in practice of law. So what we have today is a presentation which is called Understanding the 4 Stages of a Solo Law Firm, going through the journey from $0 to $1 million. And you know, it seems like it makes sense, but I understand, Rjon, that it is not taught in law school. So perhaps you could tell me a little bit about yourself and just take a few moments to tell us what how to manage a small law firm is all about.
Well, thanks, Carol. I appreciate that introduction, and I really appreciate the opportunity to be here today and share some ideas and share some practical lessons that lawyers can use to take their firm from take their solo law firm from $0 to $1 million in revenue. You know, I've been working with Practice Pay Solutions since I founded How to Manage a Small Law Firm back in 2000, I think it's 2006 at this point, maybe 2007. And you know, you've certainly seen me go through these stages of growth myself and beyond. And I want to assure everyone listening to this that it is entirely feasible and realistic, and I'm not going to say it's going to be easy, but it's certainly worth it to do what you need to do to take your solo law firm from $0 to $1 million. You're absolutely right, though. This is not a topic that they teach us anything about in law school. In fact, when I was in law school and I started talking about the practical business issues of running a law firm, my professors, and I give them the benefit of the doubt, I think they were well-meaning, they didn't know the answer, and the answer that I got was, you know, don't worry, that will be, you know, someone will be there to take care of that. Don't worry, that'll be someone else's responsibility. Don't worry, just focus on being a great lawyer and everything else will take care of itself. Which of course we know is a fantasy. That's not the reality of the business of running a law firm. And so a lot of lawyers get out of law school, pass the bar exam, take lots and lots of CLE courses, and I'm all for becoming the best lawyer that you can possibly be. And I'm not using the word but, I'm using the word and also be the best business owner of a law firm that you could possibly be, because just becoming a better and a better and a better practitioner is not going to help you run a better business. And it's very frustrating that lawyers who don't learn about this stuff, they get very frustrated in their lives and their careers. So I really appreciate this platform and this opportunity to share these lessons about the 4 stages that every solo law firm absolutely must go through in order to go from $0 to $1 million in revenue. So thank you.
You're most welcome. We're looking forward to it. Thank you.
So the second part of your question, which is how to manage a small law firm. Very briefly, how to manage a small law firm. We function as the managing partner for law firms, for solo law firms all around the country. You know, if you think about what a good managing partner does for a law firm, you know, what a good managing partner is supposed to do for a law firm, and you know, everyone in the audience, if you've never experienced a good managing partner, you know, you can be excused for having no idea. But what a really good managing partner does for a well-run, highly profitable law firm is effectively guides the partners, and depending on the size of the firm, even the associates, through their own journey from $0 to $1 million or more attorney within the firm. And I'm not going to go into all the details, but basically we function as a managing partner for law firms all around the country in the $0 to $250,000 range. When firms get into the $250,000 to $500,000 range, a solo law firm, we step in, and we also function as a chief operating officer for that firm. And in the $500,000 to $1 million range, we focus on work. We step in and also function as the chief financial officer for those law firms all around the country. And then we have a very special program called the $1 Million Solo Lawyers Club, which I'm not going to be going into detail on today just because of time limitations. We've decided for purposes of this program, we're going to be focusing on the first 3 stages, and anyone who is already qualifies for the $1 Million Solo Lawyers Club, maybe you can invite me back and we can do a presentation just on that. So, here's the problem. Let's just get started and get this right out in the open and talk about the elephant in the room. Here's the problem with building a 7-figure solo law firm. And it's actually the main reason why more lawyers don't do it. And I want you to notice, first of all, I didn't say they cannot do it, because you absolutely can build a $1 million solo law firm. And it's not even very complicated to do. It's just a bit overwhelming at times, especially when you try to reinvent the wheel all the time on your own. One of our members, who is a single shareholder of what is now, he's up to a 3-lawyer firm. He just actually wrote to me to say they had their first $250,000 month in sales. And 2 years ago, they were still worried about whether or not they could commit to pay the salary of an associate, because they had still not experienced 3 consecutive months of at least $20,000 a month in revenue. That's where they were 2 years ago, and now they're having 6-figure months. That lawyer, he's in Georgia. He and his wife at the time, back then, they were also trying to save money, trying to save a 1/4 of a point on their merchant service account, and trying to save money on paper clips, and scrubbing their own toilets, trying to save money at home instead of hiring a maid. And they were worried about paying for college tuition, even though their only child back then was still only even a toddler. Just imagine waking up every day for 18 years worried about money. It's enough to drive anyone crazy. I mean, worried is a state of mind. It's caused by uncertainty, right? You build your whole life around this feeling of mild discomfort, and you learn to justify it, and you learn to live with it, and you develop coping mechanisms so that you can tolerate it. And by the way, in case anyone is not realized, I've already begun the presentation, because this is what keeps lawyers stuck in the $0 to $250,000 range. It's this mindset, this attitude, and this coping mechanism strategy. So if your revenues are still below $250,000 a year in revenue, I imagine what I'm sharing with you right now probably hits pretty close to home. If you're in the $250,000 to $500,000 range, $500,000 and above range in your solo law firm, I imagine that you remember what it used to feel like when you ran your law firm and you had to deal with all this all the time. What happens is lawyers gather evidence to start to excuse themselves. They start to excuse their parents, their professors, and everyone else who taught them how to get along and get by and just make do, and told them all the things, what they can't do, what they shouldn't do, what they shouldn't try to do, because they're afraid of what's beyond that $250,000 milestone. Sort of like Columbus, when back in the days of the 1400s, before they discovered the New World, and everyone thought the world was flat, and if you went too far, you'd fall off the edge. And that's what happens with lawyers in that $0 to $250,000 range. Yeah, they want more money. Yeah, they want to have a nicer house. Yeah, they want to have more financial, more resources to take care of their children and whatnot. But in truth, they're actually afraid of that border between 250 and 500, because they feel like they're going to maybe just fall over the edge. So, before you know it, they wake up one day and they have become what I call institutionalized. And that means when you start to, where the rules for all the reasons why they cannot and should not and dare not get going on that journey to build the 7-figure solo law firm, before they know it, those are the rules that have come to represent safety and security for them in their lives. And those rules start to give them security. And that certainty begins to harden into concrete around their feet. Most lawyers, the reason they don't have a $1 million or a 7-figure solo or small law firm, and it is because, quite frankly, they're afraid to color outside of the lines. They're afraid of the criticism that they're going to get from other lawyers, and even sometimes family members who might just be afraid for them. But it's not dangerous, and at the end of this presentation, if nothing else, I hope at least is my goal that everyone who's watching this and listening to this will know what these 4 stages of growth are and know that you don't have to be afraid. So let's get started, okay?
Wonderful. Thank you. Take us into uncharted water.
Exactly. I almost called this presentation, had a catchy title all about uncharted water, and I had all these graphics with Columbus and sailing ships, but I decided for this one to just be much more direct to the point. So here we go. As you can see, these are the 4 stages. The first stage is obviously $0 to $250,000. And I have to emphasize here, Carol, that these are not artificial stages that I made up. I have been working with thousands of lawyers all over the country, even in other countries, for the past, I was going to say the past 10 years, but it's even longer than that now, since 1999. Working with thousands of lawyers from all over the country ever since I was a law practice management advisor with the Florida Bar's Law Office Management Assistance Service. And these stages are what I have observed. I didn't create these. This is just what I've seen over and over and over again, that this is where people get stuck. They get stuck in that first $0 to $250,000 range. About. And I wish that I had created a graphic here and I could put a big word about. Some people, they get stuck in 220. Some people get to 270. Some people can even stretch it out to 280 and 300. But somewhere around $250,000 in revenue is where the firm has to make a fundamental shift from being a law practice into being a law firm business. We call that upgrading from a successful law practice into a sustainable law firm business. So $0 to $250,000, if you think of it like an analogy with an automobile, that's first gear. First gear will get you to around $250,000 in revenue. That's about $20,000 a month in gross revenue for most practice areas, most markets, most lawyers, most everyone. That's the first stage. The second stage is $250,000 to around $500,000. A shift has to take place in most law firms to go from $250,000 up into the $250,000 to $500,000 range. And as I mentioned, this is about. It could be that the shift takes place at $200,000 for one lawyer, and the other lawyer can stretch it out to $300,000 before he or she has to make the shift to get to that next phase, which we're going to be talking about today. But at $0 to $250,000, and 0 could be that someone's just getting started with their law firm, and they can get to $250,000 in about 18 months if they do it the right way, or they could drag it out for 18 years if they want to keep trying to reinvent the wheel the whole time themselves. You can get from $250,000 to about $500,000 also in about 18 months if you make the upgrade from having a successful law practice to focus on doing what needs to be done to have a sustainable law firm business. And I make the distinction between a practice versus a business. The distinction is quite simply the degree to which you can step away from your law firm for a day, a week, 2 weeks, even a whole month at a time. And while you are away, the law firm continues to go and meet its financial, professional, and legal obligations. That means while you're away, the marketing is continuing to happen, the factory is continuing to produce work that benefits clients, the billing is continuing to happen, the firm is continuing to operate and meet its obligations and grow even in your absence. Now, if you step away and you come back after a few weeks or a month and you have a pile of crap on your desk and you have a whole bunch of bills you need to send out and 3 days worth of phone messages to return, that is not a sustainable business. Make sense?
Absolutely.
It's a critical distinction for lawyers to understand. And while we're here, I should also define what I mean by successful, because between $0 and $250,000, it's all about building a successful practice. A successful practice is one that, number one, serves the financial needs of the owner. In other words, it generates enough profit for the owner to live the way the owner reasonably wants to be living, without scraping by, without settling, without cutting back, without having to do without the basic comforts in life. if you have to scrape by and settle and all of that, whatever else the firm may accomplish, we can't really call it a successful practice if it doesn't give you enough profit to live comfortably. As a merchant service provider, I'm sure you guys completely understand that concept, right?
Yes, we do.
Right. Second part of a successful law practice is it also has to serve the personal needs of the owner. The personal needs are basically a function of how much of your personal life gets consumed or empowered by the way your law firm works. So, great, you make $250,000, maybe even make $500,000. But if you got to miss all of your kids' sports events or after-school activities, if you become a stranger to your spouse, if you don't have time to really enjoy life, then the firm is not serving your personal needs.
Right.
So number one is it's got to serve your financial needs. Number two, it's got to serve your personal needs. And number three, in order to be what I call a successful law practice, and I should go back to the previous slide, $0 to $250,000 is all about creating a successful law practice. It's got to also serve your professional needs. You make $1 million a year. You don't have to work too many hours, but it requires you to do work you hate for clients you despise. No, I don't call that a successful practice. So 0 to 250 is all about creating a successful practice. $250,000 to $500,000 is all about upgrading that practice and turning it into a sustainable law firm business. As I mentioned before, that is the degree to which you could step away, you come back after days, weeks, months away, and your business is still running and growing and serving everyone's needs. Yours, your staff, your clients, your community, whatever.
Yes.
From $500,000 to $1 million in revenue, it's really all about tightening up and making more objective management decisions. This is where a chief financial officer steps in. This is where you start really paying attention to the nickels and the dimes, because this is where those nickels and dimes really start to add up, which is why whenever a lawyer asks me if they should accept credit cards, and whenever we go into a firm that's got accounts receivables problems, and all of the management problems that flow from accounts receivables problems, and we advocate, yes, you should definitely give your clients the option of accepting credit cards, and they want to start shopping around for 1/4 of a point here or 1/8 of a point there. It's like, what difference does it make 1/4 of a point or 1/8 of a point when the revenues are down in the $250,000 to $500,000 range? But when you start getting up into $1 million in revenue, those numbers start to add up, and then you have to pay attention to the financial statements. $500,000 to $1 million is really all about learning how to make better financial decisions for your firm. And keep in mind, it is much easier to make $1 in a law firm than to save $1 in a law firm. I hope everyone listening to this really pays attention. It is easier to make $1 in a law firm than to save $1 in a law firm. And pretty much everything you're doing to try to save a couple bucks in your law firm, if you took the same time and the same energy and invested it on marketing and sales and management and the things that contribute to the growth of the firm, you would grow your firm much, much faster and more easily. Last is, of course, the $1 Million Solo Lawyers Club, which we're not going to be talking about in a lot of detail on this presentation, but I put it in here anyway just to round out the picture, because once you get past about $1 million in revenue, once you break the 7-figure barrier, a whole new world of opportunity opens up for a lawyer, and it becomes so much more fun. And it's actually easier to run a $1 million law firm than it is to run a $250,000 law firm. Likewise, it's easier to run a $500,000 solo law firm than it is to run a $250,000 law firm. And it's a lot easier to run a $1 million law firm even than it is to run a $500,000 law firm. And I think by the time we're done here today, everyone will understand why. So let's go to the next slide. Now, this is a graph, as you can see, time down the bottom, money up at the top, and this is the way everyone would like to think the revenues of a law firm go. Everyone likes to think that they go up like that, nice and steady, and you feel like if they're not steady and consistent and exact and precise and linear, you feel like something's going wrong, and lawyers start to panic, and they actually start to course correct prematurely and screw things up. And that's a big part of the challenge in the $0 to $250,000 range, is teaching basic financial control concepts so that lawyers don't undermine and undo their growth and success. Make sense?
Yes, it does.
So usually lawyers say, yeah, okay, I understand, nothing's perfect, it's not going to be exactly straight, and they can sort of reconcile themselves to the idea that it might look a little bit more like this. And you'll notice that, revenues in the $250,000 range are typically going to climb faster than profits, because in the $250,000 to $500,000 range, we're usually investing or reinvesting a lot back into the business so that it's more sustainable.
Right.
Make sense?
Yes.
So they're like, oh, okay, I can get along with that. But in reality, this is how every owner of $1 million, $2 million, $5 million solo lawyer, a solo law firm, is going to tell you that we actually did it. This is the reality that I'm about to show you. Not pretty, but it's honest and it's real. That's what it really looks like. You're gonna make mistakes. You're gonna make missteps. You're gonna make course corrections. You're gonna embark on a marketing strategy. It's not gonna work. You're gonna have to retrench. You're gonna hire probably 3 or 4 different times to fill a particular position till you get to the right person who's profitable for you. That is the reality of building $1 million solo law firm. The black line is pure fiction and fantasy. The blue line is a compromise. It's a settlement. It's like the stages of grief, where or how alcoholics try to negotiate terms to stay on the bottle. Right. The green line is the ugly truth. It's the reality. But it's very liberating when you can embrace the fact that that's how it really works. And I'm going to show you today some things you can do to prevent that green line from making you sick or scaring you too much. Right. But you got to get that that's how it really is. And by the way, big thing to look out for as you take your journey from $0 to $1 million in solo revenue is any lawyer who does not get and embrace the fact that it's really like that green line. That's someone who you can be pretty sure respectfully has no idea what they're talking about, and you should probably stop taking business management advice from them. You could take advice from them as to how to practice law. They could be a brilliant practitioner, but if they don't understand that the green line is reality, don't take business advice from them. Don't take management advice from them. Don't take staffing advice from them. Don't take budgeting advice from them. If they don't understand that the green line is reality, I can tell you that most of their advice is going to focus on where and how you can cut back on your expenses, which is exactly the wrong strategy for growth.
Right.
Got it?
Yeah, very clear. Yeah, better to embrace the reality.
Yeah. So let's get right to it. So in the $0 to $250,000 range, there are certain challenges that you can anticipate, and it's sort of like to be forewarned is to be forearmed. And if you don't know that these are the challenges that you're going to experience, then when you experience them, they might tend to freak you out. And to the right are the solutions, and we'll go over these briefly one by one. At the end of this webinar, I have a free resource that I've prepared especially for your audience, Carol. I've got a series of checklists that go into a lot of the stuff in more detail, and everyone can get this. It's my compliments. Just
excellent.
Just because, I mean, literally, this is a presentation that normally when we enroll new members in our program, we do a half-day live orientation for several dozen lawyers every quarter right before our live quarterly meeting, and we spend almost a half a day really drilling into this and showing lawyers how they can start to make a profit in their firm and increase the revenues by thousands of dollars a month, like instantly. Like literally they walk out of the door, they go back to their office, and then we get thank you notes and cards and emails and posts on our private discussion forum talking about how they implemented 1 or 2 of these simple little things, and like boom, their income goes up.
Yes.
We don't have time for that in the context of this webinar, obviously. So I'm going to share a checklist to just try to help people along. Fair enough?
Perfect. Absolutely. Thank you so much.
All right. So in the 0 to 250 range, big challenge is low leverage. You don't have anyone to help you get things done. You end up licking stamps, answering your own phones, running your own errands, scrubbing your own toilet, picking up your own dry cleaning, literally even sometimes walking your own dog. I love my dog. I love to walk my dog. I take my dog to the office every day, and sometimes I got to ask my personal assistant to take my dog for a walk because it's just not the highest and best use of my time to be running those kinds of errands, picking up dry cleaning and things like that. In the context of a solo and small law firm, in the 0 to 250 range, you just often don't have the experience to know what you should be getting leverage on. You don't have the experience to know how to get that leverage. And quite frankly, in many cases, they just don't have the operating capital to buy that leverage. So low leverage is a huge challenge in the 0 to 250 range, which keeps lawyers stuck there. Unpredictable cash flow, obviously a big problem, but the real problem with the unpredictable cash flow is what it does to their mindset. A person who has unpredictable cash flow, look, when you have unpredictable cash flow and you're doing $1 million a year, $2 million a year, a little up, a little down, no big deal. You're not worried about whether you're going to take your kids on vacation. You're not worried about whether you're going to, what you're going to be ordering for dinner that night or whether you're going to be able to make payroll, next week. My wife and I right now are moving, and we're having a dispute with we're getting a house, and we're having a dispute with the person that we were renting from temporarily. And in the old days, it would have been like, oh my God, what's going to happen to our move if we don't get our deposit back? Now it's not a big deal. We're moving because we want to move. And if we get our deposit back, that's good. If we don't get our deposit back, that's disappointing. But if not, changing our strategy or our plans. So a lot of people in the 0 to $250,000 range, they think the unpredictable cash flow is a function of the amount of cash flow, but it's actually the lack of predictability that messes up their plans. Does that make sense?
It does, very much so.
Hit or miss marketing, another big challenge. The hit or miss marketing is also a big cause of the unpredictable cash flow, and it causes them to tend to accept clients and take cases that they really know they shouldn't take because they have unpredictable or hit or miss marketing instead of a predictable, reliable marketing system. No sales training, big challenge. They don't teach us anything about the business of running a law firm in law school, and they certainly don't teach us how to ethically, professionally, reliably, and how to feel good about the sale of legal services. When you learn about the sale of legal services, it's one of the best feelings you've got. I love it when lawyers come to us and we teach them about how to sell legal services, and they say, selling legal services used to be something that I dreaded, and now it's my favorite part of the business. And you got to learn about the sale of legal services. Selling is something you do for a client, not something you do to a client. Just keep that in mind. Maybe not on the slide, but write that down. Sales is something you do for a client, not something you do to a client if you're doing it the right way. The solutions, of course, are triage, policies, and procedures. Basic, simple. Okay, so in the next phase, in the $250,000 to $500,000 range, we're going to talk about some of the key policies and key procedures. There's 12 key internal policies, 12 key external policies, and 24 key administrative procedures that you're going to have to address in the $250,000 to $500,000 range. But in 0 to 250, just triage, just see what's breaking, and instead of fixing the problem, solve the problem.
Right.
And there's a difference between fixing the problem and solving the problem. You fix the problem, and guess what happens next week? You got to fix it again.
Yeah.
Solving the problem is when you have the perspective and the maturity and the resources, and you say this problem is going to reappear, so I'm going to create policies. I'm going to create a procedure. I'm going to create a system so that this problem doesn't appear, as opposed to just getting your kicks off of being able to fix the problem every time it pops up in your business, like a firefighter, right?
Right.
Creating a business model. I'm working on a manuscript, and I'm just going to read something straight from the manuscript. The question is, what is a business model? In its simplest sense, a business model describes how a firm makes money. It involves making something and selling something. In a broader sense, the business model tells a story that is supported by the numbers. And I quote a brilliant author, John McGreta, who wrote an article in Harvard Business Review in 2002. He wrote, "When business models don't work, it's because they either fail the narrative test, meaning the story doesn't make sense,
Right.
or the numbers test, meaning the profit and loss doesn't add up."
Yeah.
That's what I mean by having at least a basic business model. There should be a story that explains how in the world your firm is supposed to make money. And if the only story you have is, I'm going to trade dollars for hours, that's a problem.
Yeah.
Basic
Definitely.
marketing systems, and systems is in quotes because systems are reliable, systems are replicable, systems are predictable. A system is not, I'm going to go out and just hope to meet someone and hope that the phone rings. You know, lawyers, it's very often easy to spot the lawyer who's stuck in the $0 to $250,000 range because they're very often the lawyers who brag about all of my business comes from referrals. Well, holy crap. If all of your business comes from referrals, that means you're leaving a lot of business on the table. That means there's a lot of people who you're not helping, who probably need your help, who want your help, who would probably gladly trade you dollars for your solutions, who you're not helping because all you're doing is sitting around waiting for the phone to ring. A marketing system is not sitting around and waiting for the phone to ring. Well, I guess that could be called a system. I would characterize it as a bad one.
Yes, exactly.
I systematically avoid doing anything to grow my business and just wait for the phone to ring. Learning how to sell. As I said earlier, learning how to sell is something that every lawyer has to do to get to $1 million in revenue. And once you do, the good news is you can learn to love it. It's a really great feeling. It's very self-empowering. When you know how to sell legal services, you have the confidence and the courage to turn down crappy clients with crazy cases. Make sense?
Yes.
And the last solution that I'm going to emphasize here is give yourself a new experience. If you're hanging around with a bunch of lawyers who are whining and crying and complaining about the economy and making excuses about why they can't make more money and griping about having bad clients and complaining or even bragging about having to spend too many hours in the office every day or every week or every year and griping and complaining and taking pride in their how much pain they can endure and how many fires they can put out. Give yourself a new experience and hang around with highly successful lawyers, owners of $1 million and $2 million solo law firms. We don't talk about those kinds of things. We don't take pride in how good we are at putting out fires. We get excited about finding ways to avoid the fires from erupting in the first place. We don't gripe and complain about, uncooperative staff and terrible clients. We get excited every time our staff, makes our lives easier and reaches a new level of proficiency.
Much better circle to be hanging out in.
It certainly is a better life. So let's go to the next. Let's go to the next slide here. $250,000 to $500,000 in revenue. $250,000 to $500,000 in revenue. As I mentioned earlier, this is all about upgrading from just having a successful law practice that depends on you to physically be there every day, every week, every month, into a sustainable law firm business that operates independently without you having to be there every day, every week, every month. Make sense?
Yes, it does. That's a great distinction.
Right. So the challenges that lawyers are typically going to experience in the $250,000 to $500,000 range is very often what keeps them stuck in this stage of growth is unprofitable staff. Every employee working for you should help you make a profit. If they're not helping you make a profit and or making your life easier, then you have to face the fact that you're working for them, they're not working for you.
Right.
There's only two reasons to have someone on your staff, and that's because they help you make a profit and or they make your life easier. Ideally, both. How much of a profit? I would say a general rule of thumb, at least 3 to 5 times their salary. If an employee is not helping you make at least 3 to 5 times their salary, there's a problem. Or, put another way, there's a lot of room for improvement.
Yes.
Unreliable workflow processes. That means you bring work to the firm and you can't always be entirely sure that it's going to get done. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't, hit or miss, and then you end up feeling like you got to be involved in everything, and once you feel like you got to be involved in everything, it's like the monkey who sticks the hand into the jar and grabs the seed or grabs the nut, makes a fist, and gets trapped.
Yeah.
You know, if you don't have reliable workflow processes to know that you can delegate things to your staff and they get done, then you're like that monkey who's trapped with your fist in the jar. The big challenge is unprofitable attorney activities, meaning you're not being deliberate and discerning and discriminate with how you invest your time. The most valuable thing for an attorney to be doing who owns a law, the most valuable thing for the owner of a law firm to do is to make sure that the firm is selling legal services.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you don't sell legal services, there's no work to do. There's no one to help. There's no way to make any money if the firm isn't selling legal services. Number 2 is marketing to make sure that there's a steady stream of prospective clients coming to the door for whom you can make sales.
Mm-hmm.
Number 3, and this should hit near and dear to your heart as a merchant service provider, is making sure the firm gets paid. Because if the firm doesn't get paid, everything's going to stop sooner or later.
Mm-hmm.
And last and least is making sure the work gets done. Now, I want to make a distinction between $0 to $250,000, where the emphasis is very often on making sure you get that you do the work, versus $250,000 to $500,000, where the focus is on making sure the work gets done. See how that connects up to profitable staff and workflow processes?
Definitely.
And last and not least, a big challenge that keeps lawyers trapped in the $250,000 to $500,000 range is what I like to call shiny object syndrome. Something worked to get you over $250,000. You're no longer gasping for air, no longer struggling for cash flow, no longer worried about how you're going to pay rent or how you're going to make payroll next month.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden, instead of making what's already working better, so many lawyers get this bright idea to do something different.
Right.
Let's change directions. Let's add a practice area. Let's do something different and new instead of just making the business work better.
Mm-hmm.
$250,000 to $500,000, it's all about building the factory. Not the most sexy part of the practice, not the most exciting to the uninitiated, but I promise you, it's the most profitable thing you can do is work on those processes, policies, systems, procedures to get that factory going. So some solutions that a lawyer can do if they find themselves stuck in this $250,000 to $500,000 range, or maybe even passing through it. And as I said earlier, if you've been in the $250,000 to $500,000 range for more than about 18 to 24, 36 months at most, you're stuck.
Yeah, no longer making progress.
No longer making progress.
Mm-hmm.
Proper job descriptions. Taking the time to document the difference between the job of a receptionist versus a secretary versus a paralegal versus an associate versus a rainmaker versus a manager versus a chief financial officer versus a bookkeeper versus the owner of the firm. If those job descriptions, all of those, by the way, will be in the checklist that people will be able to get at the end of this.
Great.
Those job descriptions will be in all 4 checklists, not just the $250,000 to $500,000 range. receptionist, secretary, paralegal, associate, rainmaker, manager, chief financial officer, and owner. I feel like I say that every day. Those job descriptions are not clearly delineated and clearly defined. Number one, it's almost impossible to manage anyone. You can't hold anyone accountable, and you can't, and it doesn't allow you to do something that you got to learn to do if you're going to get over $500,000 in revenue, and that is you got to learn to go hard. You got to learn to be tough on the problem and easy on the person. If you don't have proper job descriptions, then what you end up doing is being tough on the person because you can't really wrap your hands around the problem. And if you can't do that, you're going to have a hard time building a team, and you're going to end up with a bunch of disinterested employees. It's going to be really miserable to try to get over $500,000. It's kind of like trying to go 70 miles an hour in second gear on your car. You can do it, but your fillings are going to start to shake loose.
Yes. Your car's not going to appreciate it.
Yeah, eventually you're going to blow a gasket and break down.
Yep.
Number 3, calendar your profits. Your calendar should be used as one of your most profitable law firm management tools. Calendar profitable activities. If you're not calendaring your profitable activities, what ends up happening is everything that's urgent, but not necessarily long-term important, consumes your time. And you wake up a year and a half, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 10 years, stuck in this $250,000 to $500,000 range, wondering how all those other lawyers passed you by. And it's because they were probably calendaring their profits and you weren't. And the last solution that I'm going to suggest to help you get from $250,000 to $500,000 is build in more accountability. You know, your staff cannot help hold you accountable because at the end of the day, when push comes to shove, they're worried about their job. Your friends and your family can't really hold you accountable because at the end of the day, they got to live with you.
Right.
So you got to find someone to help hold you accountable, to push you to doing the things that you need to do, to show you when you're getting distracted with shiny object syndrome, to show you when you're failing to calendar profits, to show you when you're not really getting the profits you need to be getting from your staff. You need to build more accountability into your business and into your life if you want to get past $500,000 in revenue. This is where a good managing partner, what a good managing partner does is part of what a good managing partner does is helps the partners and the associates who he or she manages to set goals and make plans and give them guidance and education and resources. But when they really take an interest, when they really dig in and start to take a big interest in those partners and those associates, they really start to hold them accountable, and that propels those people up the ladder. Make sense?
Absolutely. Yes, I love what you're saying about that because it's not necessarily something you can do on your own. Having someone who pushes you for that accountability is so very important.
I'll tell you, Carol, you know, Abraham Lincoln said, a lawyer who represents himself has a fool for a client. When owners of million and multi-million-dollar solo law firms get together, we jokingly say a lawyer who tries to be his or her own managing partner is an idiot.
Yeah.
And that's the more polite way that we refer to them. Don't try to be your own managing partner, right. And don't ask your husband or your wife to be your managing partner, or else you're going to be seeking out the services of a divorce lawyer pretty soon.
Don't need that.
All right. So that's $250,000 to $500,000. That's the challenges, the solutions. $500,000 to $1 million. This is what we call breaking the 7-figure barrier. Challenges. When you get up over around $500,000, it's certainly as you start to get closer to the 7-figure barrier, things are going to start to happen faster than they used to when you were tripping along at $250,000, $300,000, $400,000 in revenue. Decisions are going to come at you faster. Opportunities are going to come at you faster. The consequences of good decisions versus bad decisions are going to be magnified. Too much information is going to come at you. If you don't upgrade and shift up from second gear to third gear, just too much information is going to be coming at you. You got to be making more important financial decisions. You got to be making more staffing decisions. You got to be making more long-term marketing and strategic decisions. You got to be making a lot more decisions about cases and clients and policies and systems and procedures, and it's going to start to get overwhelming, and we see it happen all the time. It's like almost a joke. I mean, if it wasn't so sad, we'd call it a joke. How many lawyers like bounce up against that seven-figure barrier, and next thing you know, they're back below $500,000 in revenue because they just got overwhelmed.
Yeah.
Too many people want a piece of you. To get to $1 million in revenue, you're going to have to get help from other people. The Marlboro Man, the independent, pulled you up from your bootstraps, never got help from anyone, that's a fictional character. That doesn't exist in real life. In real life, to get to $1 million in revenue consistently, reliably, year after year after year, you're going to have a team. You're going to surround yourself with people who have strengths that you don't have. And they're all going to want a piece of you. Yeah. Clients are going to want a piece of you. Staff is going to want a piece of you. Associates on your team who you're mentoring, they're going to want a piece of you. Vendors are going to want a piece of you. Other attorneys who see your success and want you to, and are hoping that you'll be willing to pay it forward like you should, they're going to want a piece of you.
Right.
And pretty soon you feel like you got nothing left for yourself, and the whole thing can start to unravel, especially because the last point is it will start to get lonely. Mm-hmm. When you have $1 million solo law firm and you go to a bar function and you talk about having $1 million solo law firm, you are going to find out, unfortunately, that there are a lot of lawyers who would rather sit around and commiserate with you about the difficulties and the challenges and celebrate what a hero they are because they're able to ride in and put out fires in their sub-$250,000 law practice. Mm-hmm. And when you ride in talking about your $1 million solo law firm that you can step away from for days, weeks, or maybe even a month at a time because you've built the policies, the processes, the systems, the procedures, they are not all going to celebrate you.
Right.
I'll just leave it at that. That is a subject of a much longer conversation that I'd be happy to have with anyone who wants to have it. Solutions. Calendar out farther ahead. Mm-hmm. Right now, my calendar is never less than 18 months ahead. Every quarter, my team, we sit down and we plan out and we make sure that my calendar goes out 18 to 24 months. And I'm seriously considering going even farther than that.
Right.
If you want to have $1 million solo law firm, if you're wondering why you're having a hard time breaking that seven-figure barrier, a really great thing to do is take out your calendar and plan 18 to 24 months out, and then work your way back to put your priorities in order for what needs to get done today. Mm-hmm. Install key metrics. If you're not managing your business by the numbers, it's going to be almost impossible to sustain $1 million law firm. You're going to waste tens of thousands of dollars of expenses every month, and maybe even more than that. You're going to miss hundreds of thousands of dollars of opportunities if you're not managing your business by the key financial numbers. Your budget variance report, cash flow projections, work in process, accounts receivable, cash position. These will all be on the checklist that people can get my compliments at the end of this program.
Fabulous.
Along with a lesson, a 45-minute lesson just on the key financial numbers. Obviously, we don't have time for it today, but when they get that checklist, it'll show them how to get that lesson, my compliments.
Great.
But the thing is, you gotta get used to managing your business by the numbers. You can't be managing it based on how you feel. You can't be managing it based on what you think. You got to be managing it based on what you see in front of you with key metrics.
Mm-hmm. Very much so, and definitely it's something that isn't necessarily done in small law practices, because you're working on your gut a lot of the time. Yeah, very important.
And that's why they don't ever get to $1 million.
Mm-hmm.
Upgrade your policies and your procedures. Your policies, your systems, your procedures, this is a living, breathing thing. You don't just do it and then forget about it. And you're never going to make them perfect. It's always going to be a process of improvement. You're always going to be evolving and testing, and as you break into new ground, you're going to discover that you need new policies and new procedures to deal with the new challenges that you encounter, and you're going to discover that you're outgrowing old policies and old procedures. My team and I are probably, in the next 2 months, we probably have 6 different meetings on the calendar scheduled to revamp some policies and procedures that we have outgrown in the last 6 months.
Right.
Just the nature of the beast.
Yeah.
And last is, and this is probably the most overlooked solution. It's the least expensive, it's the easiest to fix, and that is soar with eagles instead of pecking around with chickens. I alluded to that earlier. You know, you've got to be careful who you are, spending your time with.
Yeah.
And if you're hanging around with a bunch of lawyers who are, struggling and taking pride in their struggles, they might not act like they're taking pride in their struggles, but they're bragging about how miserable things are.
Yes.
How much they can take, how much they can suffer. Those are chickens. They're pecking around in little seeds and crumbs. If you want to have $1 million firm, it doesn't matter if you have $1 million firm already or if you're just getting started. I promise you, if you are optimistic, if you are really ambitious, if you are committed to doing what it takes to have $1 million firm, owners of $1 million solo law firms we will welcome you into our fold, so long as we know you're serious, so long as we see evidence that you're thinking like we're thinking. We love helping people grow. Owners of successful businesses, I only work with law firms. That's my niche. That's the only thing I really claim expertise is, how to build $1 million solo law firm. You work with businesses in all different fields with practice pay solutions. Tell me if this is the case across the board, please. I suspect that owners of the most successful businesses in any field are always happy to find someone who's really ambitious and serious about being successful and always willing to pay it forward and help them. Is that what you see as well?
Oh, absolutely. And it really is a sign of someone who is successful, is that they're willing to recognize and help people up. Yes.
Yeah, so that's a big thing, is soar with eagles instead of pecking around with chickens.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And if anyone wants, I'll give some, and when they sign up for the check, if they ask for the checklist, I won't impose these ideas on anyone, but if you're interested and you demonstrate your commitment and your interest by requesting the checklist, I'll send you some information about some different places you can go to meet some successful lawyers who can rub off on you in a good way.
Good to know where to soar with the eagles.
Yeah, there you go. So here we go. Why lawyers get stuck. Lawyers get stuck in the $0 to $250,000 range because because they're a one-man band. They are their own receptionist, their own secretary, their own paralegal, their own associate, their own rainmaker, their own manager. It's just very complicated. You can't do it all. What's the first thing that I should delegate? What's the first thing that I should offload? That's the first question everyone asks. And the answer is your calendar. Get someone else to answer your phones. Get someone else to control your calendar. Do not be your own receptionist. Get someone else to do that. That will free up a lot of time and go a long way towards helping you get to $250,000 in revenue. $250,000 to $500,000 in revenue. Why do great lawyers? I mean, we're talking about great practitioners. Climbing this ladder from 0 to $1 million. It's got nothing to do with being a better lawyer. It's all practical stuff, right?
Yes.
People get stuck in the $250,000 to $500,000 range because they get overloaded.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't have a factory, if you don't have a reliable way of getting work done, then bringing in $500,000 worth of business just overwhelms you. And next thing you know, you're working twice as many hours. Yeah, you're making more money, but you're burning yourself out, you're breaking yourself down, and you just can't keep it going.
No.
That's why you've got to build that factory. That's why you've got to upgrade from a successful practice to a sustainable law firm business, or else you're going to overwhelm yourself. More business coming to the firm will just look like more work for you. It'll just look like more arguments with your spouse. It'll just look like more apologies to your children. It'll just look like more problems. And guess what will happen? You'll start to sabotage your own marketing. You'll start to sabotage your own sales calls, and your subconscious mind will just start to go into protection mode and start to destroy your law firm so you don't destroy your life.
Yeah.
That happens so often. It's really sad to see. $500,000 to $1 million in revenue, it's just too much information.
Yeah.
You got too much information coming at you. You got to be looking at your budget variance report, your cash flow projections, your accounts receivables, your cash position. And when I say cash flow projection, I mean you got to be looking and seeing how much revenue you anticipate to have coming in for the next 6 weeks to 8 weeks. You shouldn't be waking up 6 to 8 weeks from now surprised by what's happening. You should know ahead of time while there's still time to do something about it. You got to be dealing with metrics. You got to know ahead of time who is the most profitable people on your staff. What is the most profitable marketing activities that you're doing? Does this ad outperform that ad? Does this networking group outperform that networking group? Are these clients more profitable than those clients? You got to know this stuff if you're going to get from $500,000 to $1 million without just flat out killing yourself in the process. It's all about not getting overwhelmed with information. Mm-hmm. Key metrics and financial reports that will be addressed in the checklist in more detail at the end of this workshop, at the end of this webinar. Okay?
Great.
$1 Million Solo Lawyer Club. It's just entering the unknown. Mm-hmm. So few lawyers have any idea what it really means to have $1 million solo lawyer club, to have $1 million solo law firm.
Yes.
That it's like going into uncharted territory. Bruce Lee, the martial arts genius, you know who I'm talking about. A lot of people don't realize that Bruce Lee was also a world-class, wildly successful entrepreneur. In fact, at the time of his death, Bruce Lee had as many books on business and marketing and financial controls as he did on martial arts in his personal collection. A lot of people don't know that.
Mm-mm.
Bruce Lee has a quote that I love, and he said, "To know and not to do is not to know." Lots of lawyers can tell you what they think it means to have $1 million solo firm. Lots of lawyers can tell you what they imagine the challenges and the opportunities are like to have $1 million solo firm. Lots of lawyers can tell you what they what makes sense to them that should work to get you to $1 million. But unless they've got $1 million firm, respectfully, they don't know what they're talking about.
Mm-hmm. That's
why lawyers get stuck in that. Get stuck with $1 million firm, because if you're not stuck, you can get from $1 million to $2 million so fast,
right?
So fast, it'll spin your head.
Mm-hmm.
All right. What needs attention when?
Mm-hmm.
From $0 to $250,000, it's all about training, triage, marketing, and leadership.
Mm-hmm.
The question you should be asking yourself is, how will you be held accountable?
Right.
You need to have a managing partner. From $250,000 to $500,000, the factory is going to run out of capacity. You're going to run out of capacity, and the business won't be sustainable. The question you should be asking yourself is, how will the firm keep up with growth?
Mm-hmm.
You need to have a chief operating officer.
Yes.
sorry, this got out a little bit out of alignment. From $500,000 to $1 million, you got to start managing by information, not by feelings. The question you need to be asking yourself is, how will you know it's actually working?
Right.
How will you know what's working, what's not working, where it's working, why it's working? You need to have a chief financial officer who can feed you intelligent financial and other metrics data so you can make objective, rational decisions. $1 Million Solo Lawyers Club, it's all about marketing your message to the world. We start having conversations about what you want your legacy to be. What do you want to use the firm to do with the world? It's all about the company you keep. $250,000 to $250,000. You got to have basic internal policies, basic external policies, basic procedures. Those are all going to be covered in the checklist at the end of this webinar.
Okay.
You're going to start looking for making your first profitable hire. Emphasis profitable hire. You should not have a revolving door.
Yeah.
Sales, sales, and more sales. Basic pricing strategies and basic marketing. You don't need anything fancy. You don't need any highly complicated, expensive techno gizmos. You don't need, sophisticated websites and pay-per. You don't need to mess around with any of that stuff. Just do the stuff that lawyers have been doing for hundreds and hundreds of years with marketing and pricing strategies and sales, and you can get to $250,000 in about 18 months or less. Very reliable. $250,000 to $500,000. You're going to want to implement the 12 key internal policies. Those are the policies that govern your staff.
Right.
The 12 key external policies. Those are the policies that govern everyone who is not taking a paycheck from you, including your vendors and your clients. 24 key operational procedures. These will all be laid out in the checklist. That's why I'm not going into them in a lot of detail. I'm just trying to set everyone's mind so they understand what to deal with. You want to be focusing on the predictability of your marketing, predictability of your sales systems so that sales are happening reliably, consistently every time. That way you can delegate it to someone else and you don't have to be there every day yourself to meet with prospective clients. You don't even have to be a lawyer to sell legal services. The bar rules do not say you got to be a lawyer to sell legal services. Paralegals can sell legal services. Associates can sell legal services. Associates are attorneys, obviously. But you don't even need to be a lawyer to sell legal services. But if you don't have a sales system, then you're going to be trapped being the only one who can convert prospective clients into paying clients.
Right.
And of course, basic, simple financial controls that any lawyer can learn. I do not have an accounting degree. I do not have an MBA. I did not study finance in undergraduate. I literally have to take off my socks and shoes to do basic math. I'm not a math guy, but I do know how to understand financial reports.
Really important.
Any lawyer can learn this stuff. $500,000 to $1 million, it's about automating those marketing systems so they get done even when you're not there. Measuring your sales. Testing the factory with ongoing progress, not perfection. What we do is we make you go away for 2 days and we see what breaks and then we fix it. And then we make you go away for a week and we see what breaks and then we fix it. And then we make you go away for 2 weeks and we see what breaks and then we fix it. No one should be taking blind leaps of faith. They should be doing this in a tested, organized, systematic way. $500,000 to $1 million, it's all about staff, and more staff. And you literally buy your way to productivity. Management by the metrics, we've already talked about that, and you can't see that last thing, but at the bottom it says key financial controls, which are going to be in the checklist. Right. Your budget variance report, your cash flow projections, and things like that. The $1 Million Solo Lawyer Club, the question you should be asking yourself all the time is, what do I want to use this business to do for the world next? Because by the time you got $1 million, $2 million, certainly a $3 million law firm, you're pulling $50,000, $100,000, $150,000 a month net income out of the firm. For most people, that satisfies all of their wildest financial needs. And the question starts to become, what can I do for the world with this successful law firm that I have created? It's all about the legacy. Make sense?
It does make sense. It is about the legacy at that point, isn't it? Great
really
place to be. Yeah.
So here we are at the end. You want to take your solo law firm from 0 to $1 million. One of the things that can help you do that is to get your hands on a complimentary checklist to help you on your journey, and you can do that at www.howtomanageasmalllawfirm.com. That's my website, /4 stages, STAGES, howtomanageasmalllawfirm.com /4 stages, and those checklists will help you implement some of the concepts and ideas that I shared with you here today. I sure hope this gives everyone some insight and helps them anticipate what's ahead and helps them spot where they might be getting stuck, because like I said, if you're in any of these 4 stages for more than about 18 to 24 months, you're probably stuck.
Right. Well, Rjon, this is fabulous, and I just want to say from this perspective where I am, which is not as a lawyer, this material information is so valuable for any small business owner, that those stages that we get to and those places where we need assistance and accountability are all, they go across the board. But it's fabulous, fabulous information for lawyers and for law practices, becoming law firms. Thank you so much for this information, and I'm sure that everyone who is listening to this today and following along is going to take advantage of what you have provided us in the checklists. Can't wait to see that information, and just can't thank you enough for taking the time today to assist anybody who has listened to this in automatically taking some steps. I'm sure that you're going to get some thank you emails right away.
Sincerely, Carol, I think you can tell from my enthusiasm, I really appreciate the opportunity to share this message with lawyers everywhere. The more lawyers who hear this message, the better it is for our industry, the better it is for our clients, and the better that we can all make the world. So thank you so much for this opportunity.
You're most welcome. And on behalf of Practice Pay Solutions, thank you to you, and thank you to the audience for listening. Have a great day.
Points that I made could have been its own webinar.
Oh, absolutely. There's a depth of information there that just is so worthwhile. So,
and
yeah.
one of the topics that we could, we could do a whole webinar just on key policies and procedures.
Oh, yes.
One topic that might be of interest for Practice Pay would be to teach lawyers about the key financial reports.
Mm-hmm.
That seems to be a logical connection to why practice, to the business of Practice Pay.
Oh, for sure. Yes, definitely. Okay.
I could do that, or I could have our Chief Financial Officer do that.
Wonderful. Okay. There's lots ahead, so I'm excited about it.
One last question.
Yes.
Your last name, Vickers.
That's right.
Was your family in the education business?
I married the name, and my husband. I'm from Canada. So the Vickers family that we are from is from the Toronto area in Canada, okay. And they were all in manufacturing and business, but okay. Not education.
No, when I was very, very young, there was a family that ran a school that I went to, the Vickers family.
Oh, for goodness sakes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, probably related somewhere along the line.
Maybe. Well, thank you so much, and I appreciate your patience, and I really do appreciate that constructive criticism. I'm going to take that to heart for the next one.
Okay, great. All right. I'm sure we'll talk soon.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.